Alright, in this video I'm going to skip the crazy collage intro because I have so much information to get to, and this video is already probably going to be a lot longer than both you and I want. So today I am doing a review on my State All-Road 6061 Black Label. But before I get to that, I wanted to mention a few projects that we have coming. A lot of you have already asked when I'm going to get a review on the all-new Hunt Gravel Race Disc wheel set out. I'm hoping within the next month it will be out, so keep an eye out for that. Also, I have a really cool State All-Road 4130 project build that I'm doing. I'm actually taking the 4130 frame and turning it into a rigid mountain bike, so that video will be coming real soon. And if that all sounds really good to you, we'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to our channel because it helps us out so much. Okay, let's talk about this bike. I absolutely love this bike, but there are a few things that I wish were a little bit better, and I'm going to go over every little detail. If there is something that I missed in this video, refer back to my other video where I go through all the specs on this bike. So as of right now, I have about 250 miles on this bike, so I feel like I have a good opinion on how some of the parts work, what's good and what's bad. And if you're familiar with this bike, you probably noticed that I've changed quite a few things on here that really doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the performance of the parts I've swapped out. More or less, I have a bunch of stuff that I wanted to try. I like experimenting with new parts. I buy a lot of parts if I see them on sale or trade friends for stuff. Yeah, I like experimenting. So I'm gonna go over a lot of that right now.
I think one of the most common questions I get is how is the drivetrain? State does not use the typical SRAM or Shimano drivetrain. They actually have their own house branded derailleur and shifting system. As I mentioned in the overview video, this is not a clutch derailleur. It's actually a spring tension derailleur. It works similar to a clutch, but I would say not quite as good. So instead of having paddles, you actually just use the lever to actuate the shifts. Short push shifts up, long push shifts down. It's a pretty neat idea and it does work well. And if you're using this bike strictly for road and gravel, I do actually like the concept. It is pretty nice. But I think for cyclocross and riding a lot of single track on these bikes, it isn't the best option because there are a lot of accidental shifts that you could be doing. And it does lock out. If you start to pull in the lever a little bit, you can't shift. So that does prevent some accidental shifts. Overall, I'd rate the shifting system maybe a 6 out of 10. Better if you're just road riding. If this is primarily a road bike, I don't think you're really going to have a lot of problems with the drivetrain on this bike. As you can see, I did switch to a wolf tooth elliptical chainring. This is a 38 tooth. Stock comes with 42, and that range was pretty good. But for cyclocross, I was going to want something smaller anyways, so I went with this. You also probably noticed this bizarre crank I have on here. This is not the stock crank. There is nothing wrong with the stock State branded crank. I just got this because it was pretty cheap on AliExpress and very light, so I thought I'd give it a shot. I'm also running the State hybrid pedal, so flat pedal on one side, clipless on the other. I like these better than my Shimano. At least the clip side, they seem to be a little bit easier to get in and out of. So the cockpit on the State is really nice. I like this over the cockpit that was on the Poseidon Redwood. The reason being is the flare is a lot more natural. I believe I read this was a 15-degree flare and it just feels so comfortable and natural. The only thing is I wish that maybe the drop was a little bit lower. Not much. I'm getting used to it and I'm starting to get pretty comfortable on it. The bar tape, very comfortable. So as you can see, this is not the stock stem. Stock is 100 millimeters. This is 60. I just like playing around with setup, seeing what's comfortable. I'm a little bit more of an upright rider, so I do prefer short stems. The State saddle actually isn't too bad, but I had this WTB Rocket laying around, and I threw it on here, and I'm super impressed with it. So I think I'm actually going to stick with this seat for now. So I think these State Black Label frames are absolutely gorgeous. The paint is really good. The geometry is dialed, especially after coming off of the Poseidon Redwood for a little while, which I found that frame to be very wonky. And if you want to see why, I have videos about that you can check out. My only complaint about the frame is that they maybe should have included a port back here so you could do an internal dropper post at some point. I know that that is a trend that is getting pretty hot in gravel and cyclocross. Nothing really to report about the State carbon fork. It's a really nice, clean looking fork with through axles and flat mounts for flat mounted brakes. You know what? I lied. There is something else I don't like about this frame, and that's flat mounted brakes. That has nothing to do with State. That's just the trend in this type of biking, but flat mount brakes suck. There's no reason for them. I really don't get it. Just please do everything post mount. It makes everyone's lives easier. So this right here is the stock State mechanical disc caliper, and it's actually 2-piston, which is pretty cool, similar to the Tektro Spire, but these are crazy heavy. And surprisingly, I was not getting a lot of power out of them, and it was driving me insane because these should have decent power. So I threw these Tektros on. These are literally an exact replica of the Spire, which I've ran before with great luck. The Spire is a fantastic brake. These should be really good. And I still cannot get good power out of them. I switched to metallic brake pads. Still not getting the power I want out of them. And then I realized I just think that State used really bad cables and housing. So that's the next thing I'm going to swap out, and hopefully I get the braking power that I want. So I might actually say that the brakes are one of the biggest downsides to the bike. Luckily, that's relatively easy and somewhat cheap depending on which route you want to go. For me personally, I think I'm going to switch the calipers to hydraulic mechanical discs. I've never tried them. I hear great things. And I did just order some new cables and housing. So I'm going to throw that on there and hopefully everything gets taken care of. So I'm currently running the WTB Nano 700C by 40 tires. These are kind of my go-to cyclocross tires. I know they're technically 5 millimeters over the regulated limit, but I'm in Cat 4 in cyclocross, so I don't think anyone's going to complain. These are my favorite gravel tire, but I will say the Torino Dries or Torino Zeros that came stock are fantastic tires, so you will not be disappointed in those. So last time I weighed the bike, it was almost 20 pounds on the dot, which I think is really good for an aluminum framed gravel bike. Obviously, it seems like I changed a lot on this bike, but I did do plenty of miles on all of the stock parts. So my biggest complaints, I would say, are the brakes and the drivetrain in certain situations. If you follow our channel, you're going to see pretty soon that I am going to change the drivetrain. The reason being is I actually have had a Microshift Advent X drivetrain just sitting around. So I would like to swap it on here because I think it'll be a better drivetrain overall, and especially for cyclocross racing. But don't take that as the drivetrain totally sucks, because actually the derailleur is going on this State All-Road 4130 that I'm building up as a mountain bike. If you want to know more about this build, keep an eye out in the next couple of weeks because I'm going to do a video on it pretty quick because it is almost done and I'm stoked on this bike. If you're into bike packing, you might be disappointed with this bike, and the State 4130 might be better for you. This only has room for 2 water bottle mounts, nothing underneath, nothing on the forks unless you upgrade to the State Monster fork.
Another big question that people usually have is, how are the wheels? And what should I get, 700C or 650B? Well, in my opinion, if you can afford it, I would get both wheel sets. The reason that I say that is on State's website, if you buy a bike, if you add an extra wheel set, it's a lot cheaper. It's like $300, I think. So if you can afford the extra $300, I think it's totally worth it because you get a complete wheel set, everything you need, including the cassette and discs. To me, that's just an unbelievable deal. But I will say, I have never ridden 650B on the road, and I am totally blown away at how fast these actually feel. Part of it could be the tires. These Vittoria tires I'm a huge fan of now. I've never ridden Vittoria tires until these and the Torino Zeros, which are on my other wheel set. As far as which wheel set I think is better or what you should get, that's totally up to you. If you ride more gravel, I think the 650B is a great option and it provides a lot of comfort and traction. And if you ride a lot more road or you race cyclocross like me, the 700Cs are definitely where it's at for that. As far as the quality of State's house brand wheel set, they're pretty unbelievable in my opinion. They look fantastic. They roll great. I've had no issues with either. Granted, I don't have a ton of miles on both wheel sets, but I find them to be really awesome wheels. I did have a couple people mention that they may have had a hard time seating them or setting them up tubeless. I didn't have any problems, at least with the wheel set. I did have a problem with a bad valve, so if you're having a hard time with these, maybe check your valve. It is a pretty rounded rim, so maybe the valve is having a hard time seat against it. But yeah, I think these are really great wheels, and I think that's so smart of State to have a good wheel and tire package stock on their bikes. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I tried to pack as much information in it as I possibly could. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to do the things.